What if the very foundation of all mathematics, the pure language of logic itself, had a hidden, fatal flaw? A contradiction buried so deep we'd never find it? Well, today, we're diving into Hilbert's program, which was this monumental quest for absolute, rock-solid certainty in math.
And it all boils down to this one huge question. Can mathematics, using only its own rules and logic, prove that it's actually sound, that it will never, ever contradict itself? So, why was this question such a big deal that it kept the greatest minds of the 20th century up at night? To get it, we need to understand the crisis that started this whole thing.
All right, let's set the stage. We're talking about a time when math was kind of facing a crisis of confidence. The search was on for some kind of ultimate guarantee, a final seal of approval for the entire structure of mathematics. And that seal of approval has a name. It's called a consistency proof. It's basically a guarantee that your system of rules can't ever prove that 2 plus 2 equals 4, and also that 2 plus 2 equals 5. It's the ultimate check to make sure the whole system makes sense and won't just fall apart into nonsense.
See, around the turn of the 20th century, new ideas about things like infinity were leading to some really weird paradoxes, and mathematicians were starting to get, well, a little nervous. So in response, this brilliant guy, David Hilbert, proposed a super bold plan. His program wasn't just about solving a few puzzles, it was about securing the foundation of all mathematics, once and for all.
So, what was this master plan? Well, it was incredibly ambitious, but it was also beautifully simple in its design. Let's break it down.
Hilbert's plan basically had two steps. First, formalize everything. Turn all of mathematics, geometry, algebra, all of it, into one giant precise system with crystal clear rules. Think of it like writing out the source code for the universe. And second, and this is the really crucial part, prove that this giant system is consistent using only the most basic, undeniable, common sense methods. He called these finitistic methods. We're talking about logical steps that are so simple, so concrete, that absolutely no one could ever doubt them.
And this is a fantastic way to think about it. Imagine all of math is this huge, incredibly complex computer program. Hilbert wanted to prove, for sure, that this program was totally bug-free. But here's the catch. He insisted that the proof itself could only use the program's most simple, fundamental commands, the ones you know without a doubt are safe. Basically, math had to prove itself sound by pulling itself up by its own logical bootstraps.
For a while there, it really seemed like this grand plan might actually work. The pieces were falling into place, but the world of logic was about to be turned completely upside down by one person and one absolutely earth-shattering idea.
And here he is. Enter Kurt Gödel. In 1931, this young logician, he was only 25, published his famous incompleteness theorems. And for Hilbert's program, this wasn't just a bump in the road. It was a seismic event.
Gödel's second incompleteness theorem was a direct and, you could say, devastating blow. What it proved was that any system that's powerful enough to do basic arithmetic can never, using its own simple internal rules, prove its own consistency. The very foundation that Hilbert wanted to secure was, by its own nature, unable to vouch for itself.
And this just lays it out perfectly, right? You've got Hilbert's goal, use the simple, trustworthy parts of a system to guarantee the whole thing is safe. And then you have Gödel's reality. As soon as a system gets powerful enough to be interesting, its simple parts just aren't strong enough anymore to vouch for the entire structure. The very complexity that makes math so useful also makes it impossible for it to certify its own soundness from the inside.
So it really seemed like the quest was over. The dream of a completely self-verifying mathematics, proven sound by its own simplest tools, was just impossible. But like with all great intellectual journeys, this wasn't really an end. It was a new beginning. See, Gödel's theorem wasn't a dead end. Instead, it just forced everyone to get more creative. And that new direction was led by another brilliant mind, who found a very clever way around this massive roadblock.
And that person was Gerhard Gentzen. Now get this, just 5 years after Gödel's bombshell result, Gentzen did something that seemed impossible. He actually proved the consistency of arithmetic, which was the main system Hilbert was worried about. He somehow succeeded where Gödel had seemingly proven failure was inevitable.
So wait a minute, how is that possible? Did he find a flaw in Gödel's logic? No, not at all. He did something much, much more clever. He basically bent the rules of the game, just a little bit.
So here's the catch. Genson's proof wasn't strictly finitistic in the way Hilbert wanted. He had to step outside the system of arithmetic and use a more powerful principle. He used this concept called transfinite induction. Now, if normal induction is like climbing an infinitely long ladder one rung at a time, transfinite induction lets you climb all the rungs and then make one giant leap to a point beyond the entire ladder. It was a perfectly valid, logical method, but it was a tool from a bigger, more powerful toolbox than the one Hilbert had originally allowed.
Let's go right back to our computer program analogy. Gödel showed that the program couldn't use its own simple code to check itself for bugs. So what did Gentzen do? He came along with a super sophisticated external diagnostic tool. This tool was totally trustworthy, but it was separate from the program it was testing. He proved the program was sound, just not from the inside.
So, after all that, what does this all mean? Was Hilbert's program a failure? No, not at all. Its legacy is huge, but it evolved into something new, something deeper.
And this is really the modern takeaway. Gödel didn't kill the dream. He just revealed its true nature. The simple quest for a single consistency proof morphed into this much richer, more nuanced field we now call proof theory, which is the mathematical study of proofs themselves.
This timeline just captures the whole story so well. You start with Hilbert's incredibly bold vision. It runs headfirst into Gödel's profound limit. Then it finds this brilliant workaround with Gentzen, and ultimately, it blossoms into the modern field of proof theory, where mathematicians now use these external methods to actually measure and compare the logical strength of different mathematical systems.
And what's really cool is that, in a fascinating twist, modern logicians have found some very clever ways to formalize certain types of consistency arguments back inside a system, in a way that doesn't violate Gödel's theorem at all. It's a beautiful way of bringing the story full circle, back to the spirit of what Hilbert wanted to do in the first place.
So, we end here. This whole incredible journey leaves us with a pretty deep philosophical question. If even our most rigorous systems of logic can't give us that absolute internal proof of their own soundness, where does our deep-seated confidence in the truth of mathematics actually come from? It's a question that shows us the quest for certainty is as much about philosophy as it is about formulas.